Hey, how we doing out there, Vol Nation? This is Frank. This is the House of Orange Sports Channel. This is my favorite time of the year. I said it yesterday. I say it again today. Tennessee baseball. We're less than a month away, and that is awesome. I cannot wait for it. If you did not check out part one of our 2025 season preview, it is uploaded. You can find it under the 2025 season preview folder or season preview playlist on here. I'm recording bullpen midweek pitchers now, catchers later on tonight that will release tomorrow, and then Kerry has recorded infielders, outfielders. Those will release later in the week. If you remember the channel, I will upload all of them tonight on here. But let's get into this. Or before we get into it, hit that like, that share, that subscribe. We're on that road to 20, or I'm sorry, we're on the road to 3,000 right now, about a little over 150 away. So make sure you share this thing out. It's greatly appreciated on there. But I'm going to kind of break this up and calling it midweek bullpen, guys. Now, there's a few dudes could go either way. They could be weekend or what have you. I'm going to kind of break it into the guys that probably need to step up, guys that I don't know on, and then we're going to look at the freshmen too. The wild card in this, it's same as yesterday's A.J. Russell. What is his role going to be this year? I really don't think they're going to just tax his arm this year. I think they'll – here's my thought on where they go with it. SEC play maybe a little later. I see him easing him back in. Now, obviously, he's going to be throwing bullpens. They're going to know ahead of time. But getting game time in, you're probably going to see him ease back in. And my thought is possibly late in the year, he becomes that closer type guy. But they're not going to just throw him every night on the weekend or anything. They will manage him, especially with him being in his draft year. They're not going to overuse him coming off of that surgery. But where does he factor in coming down the stretch? I think best case you get him in a rhythm. You get back to Omaha, depending on how deep you go in Omaha, then he becomes, again, they're not going to use him every night, but still in some of those big games when you get to Omaha, that's where it could come into play at. Dylan Loy is a guy, he and Nate Snead are both, I can see him weekend rotation, I can see him bullpen. Guys, where do they go with that? I really think Snead is in the rotation. I think it's Snead, Doyle, Coons. That's who I feel are the three rotation guys. But I see Loy having a big role this year as well. I talked about him yesterday. Now, I'm curious to kind of see who the closer is, because you got to think you lost Aaron Combs, you lost Kirby Cannell, you lost, of course, Causey, Beam, Stamos, Xander Sechrist. I know I'm probably forgetting somebody here off the top of my head, but that was really kind of your main guys. Your main closer dudes were Aaron Combs and Nate Snead. Well, Snead goes to the rotation. Combs he's in who's he with now? He got traded, thinking to the Phillies possibly. But, of course, Combs will be in the minors this year. Who steps up in that closer role? I'm really thinking it's Tanner Franklin. Transfer from Kennesaw State, comes in. Had I don't have his stats from Cape Cod ball here in front of me. They were pretty good the last I looked on him. His stats last year, he had a pretty high ERA, 5.6 in JuCo. In 43 innings pitched, or he had 43 strikeouts in 27 and a third innings pitched. Here was my concern, though, and this is going to be a pattern here. He had 27 walks in 27 and a third innings pitched. And I talked about this back in the summer after they got the commitment. I think I misspoke on that. I said it was a walk per game. No, it was a walk per inning he averaged. That is a little concerning. So can they get his control down pat here? And he's a big dude, 6'5", 240. I've heard he is absolutely huge in person. There's some big dudes on this team. I'm telling you, man, especially some of these pitchers. And Kerry's talked about seeing Stone Lawless around campus, the catcher, how big he is. There are some massive dudes on this team. I look for Franklin to be a pretty vital part of that bullpen. I really do. Coming in, he's from Jefferson City, so hometown guy coming back home. I'll tell you a guy I really like, but it's kind of the same thing. Control. Marcus Phillips. Marcus Phillips, when he's on, He has electric stuff. Only problem is the control. Too many walks, too many hit by pitch as well. And I needed to pull his stats here. I'll get to them here. I'll come back to those here in just a minute. But he is a guy I like. I really like his stuff when he's on. And again, it's really just more or less getting that control down pat. I mean, I said big guy. He's listed at 6'4", 250. And just a big dude. He is. His stats last year, Phillips, 4.95 ERA. He did have 3 saves, 20 innings, 22 strikeouts, 208 batting. Well, let's see. I thought he hit more. He had 5 wild pitches, 2 hit by pitches, 15 walks, and 20 innings pitched. So and he gave up 11 runs. So he got himself into trouble more with the walks than anything. But I really like it's a dude, if he gets that control down, can be a big part of this bullpen. Andrew Banky is a guy last year, did some really good things. Left-handed pitcher. He'll be a part. He may be your main kind of setup back-end guy. It'll be him or Loy, I believe, in your bullpen as far as left-handed pitchers go. Now, there's some of the JuCo guys I'll talk about here in a minute. But I see Banky. I mean, last year he was 3.5, 4-3-1 record, 39 strikeouts, 28 innings pitched, 213 opponents batting average. He did some good things last year. I think he'll be a big part of this rotation. Now, I think he had a rough fall from what I'd seen. So how does he bounce back from that? Does that affect him? Was that an outlier, or does he bounce back here as well? But I expect really what I'm looking at, main guys out of the bullpen. This is my knowns on it. I think Franklin, if Marcus Phillips can get his control down pat, he's going to be a big part of that weekend. Banky, Dylan Loy. That's how I say. And again, Loy could start. He could be a weekend starter, but I really think now more bullpen with him. We'll see. It is subject to change because we know the last 2 years, once they got to SEC play, they had to totally change the rotation anyway with it. Other dudes listed as far as returners, Luke Payne, Austin Hundley, Braden Sharp. Payne and Sharp are listed. Sharp is a two-way guy. He can play the outfield and pitch as well. He did both in the fall. So where does he factor in? Will he play the field inning? Will he come out of the bullpen some? Luke Payne's a left-handed guy, high strikeout. He only threw 3 2/3 innings last year, had 9 strikeouts. Opponents hit for a low average against him, but he had given up a couple runs in that 3 2/3. So where does he factor in? And there's one. It may be Payne that's injured. I've got to double check that because I can't find it there. But I hope I'm wrong on that. But I'm thinking there's something to that. Austin Hundley's a guy. He had a high ERA last year. Brother of Sean Hundley, his ERA was over 6. I really feel like some of these guys are in that category. You're going to have to step up or you're going to get passed, and we'll tell you why here in a minute. That's the returning guys, and I talked about the JuCo guys yesterday. Where do they factor in on this? Because you have Brendan Arvidsson. I think he's a candidate for the weekend rotation, but he's a dude I don't think you want to go into that rotation. The last couple years, I mean, you especially 2 years ago when you had Andrew Lindsay, he wasn't getting through the 5th inning. I mean, Dolander was struggling 2 years ago. A lot of the guys were at that point. And, I mean, I'm telling you, this is why I can't say anything bad about Chase Burns. Even though he left, they can say what they want. Chase Burns bailed out those starters numerous times a couple years ago. They don't get to Omaha without Chase Burns. They don't beat Stanford out in Omaha if they don't have Chase Burns. That's just the bottom line with it. Arvidsson, though, he mainly was 5 innings or less. I'm thinking you want to get a guy can at least get you 6th or 7th inning and try to minimize taxing your bullpen. This is overall going to be a lot more talent, in my opinion. That staff, they were on at the end of the year last year. They did great. I really overall didn't think it was a great staff. I thought Coach Anderson and that did a phenomenal job with them. The way they pieced it together, especially after the A.J. Russell injury. Xander Sechrist was money at the end. He pitched in every vital game the end of the year, and he excelled in every single one of them. That's going to be a big loss for them. But Arvidsson, I'm seeing him as more of a segue, kind of a, what do you want to say, kind of a mid-range guy, I guess you could say. That I could see him coming into the game after your starter on it. Tanner Wiggins is a guy I'm interested in. Throws high 90s. Had a low ERA in JuCo, 1.40, 32 strikeouts, 25 and 2/3 innings pitched. Can he factor in at the end? He was a closer in JuCo. Where does he factor in to this? JuCo guy, again, like I said. As far as that midweek starter, I'm telling you that unless it's one of these freshmen, I think Michael Sherman, I talked about him yesterday. I think he seems ideal for that. Seems to me like he throws around 90. Pretty good stuff. A lot of innings last year in JuCo. He had 101 strikeouts and 93 and 2/3 innings, 5 complete games. To me, that seems like a guy ideal for the midweek, for that midweek starter on it. There's Crabtree, talked about yesterday. Breedlove, both of those guys had a lot of strikeouts, a lot of innings. I've seen Ryan Combs mention as possible start. I don't see it. I see him as a bullpen guy. He only threw 27 1/3 innings last year. I don't think you're going from JuCo to all of a sudden starting in the SEC. I just don't. I don't see that. But where does he factor in? He had a good fall. I saw him pitch in Sevierville at Kodak at the Smokies Stadium back in the fall. He looked pretty good with it. So these 6 guys, I think they brought in some talent. Crabtree, Combs, Sharman, Wiggins, Breedlove, Arvidsson. Where are these guys going to factor in with it? There's a lot of depth. There's not proven SEC depth. Arvidsson has thrown in SEC at Texas A&M. The others have not on it. And then that brings me to, that's why I say if you're a JuCo guy or if you're a returning guy, you better step up or you're going to get passed. And here's why. I've already talked about Tegan Coons a lot on here. I see him in the weekend rotation. I don't see any way he's not, unless it's just they're afraid to put a freshman. And Tony Vitello has not been afraid to do it. They did Blade Tidwell, Chase Burns, Drew Beam. Can't remember back before that who was in the rotations. Of course, we didn't get the games as much back then prior to ESPN Plus like we do now either. Now, the top pitching guy coming in is Anson Seibert. I've been calling him Siebert. It's Seibert, so I apologize on that. It's Anson Seibert, 6'9", 220 dude. But he's out for the year. So I'm curious to see, because I was watching a video on him. He was talking about he grew like 8 inches from, was it 8th grade into high school. And where his arms were so long, he said he had to shorten up. And now he's having arm surgery. I'm not sure if it's Tommy John or just some cleanup procedure. He's going to be out this year, though. Where does that affect? But I mean, if you see his stuff on YouTube, on like the Perfect Game class, dude's got some good stuff. There's no doubt about it. A guy that doesn't get talked about, and he didn't throw in fall ball, but Braden Krenzel was ranked 81 overall according to Perfect Game. I was watching video on him. He's 6'3", 205. Now, these weights they've got on all these guys, these are high school weights. Now that they've been with Coach Eberhardt in the weight program, I would expect every one of these dudes is probably put on about 10 to 15 pounds, if not more, on it, getting in a college weight program. Because that's one thing about Tennessee you always see. These guys they're definitely stocky dudes, always. And a lot of your pitchers, looking at it, they're going to build, their lower half. That's what they're going to work on, their lower half. They don't do bench press. At least the pitchers don't. They're more shoulders, core, legs. That's where they build at with it. You're building those legs up. These guys get stronger in their legs. They're going to add more speed, more velocity on their pitches as well. Krenzel, though's got good stuff. Based on what I saw, he was consistently with his fastball around 90. Got to think he's probably a little higher than that, especially when it warms up with it. But he had a really good changeup, really good breaking ball. I think he'll be, especially 81 overall. People's not talking about him, and I think he'll be a factor somewhere. Tate Strickland's a dude I've been told throws absolute heat. Now, with him and Aiden Hayes, we'll talk about here in a minute, Both of them pitched in the fall. It seemed like they had a little bit of control issues at times, just based on the stats. I didn't firsthand see it. They could get that down. Both dudes are talented. Strickland was 161. Hayes was 234 overall. Where will they factor in? They're going to pitch. Will it be midweek? Can they work their way into the weekend as well? Of course, this winter camp, whatever you want to call it, right now, basically spring training in respect, what guys put in the work, step up here going into the season. Because fall ball is not the be-all, end-all. But, who's doing it, who's putting in the work, who's going to be ready now as we get closer to the season. There's a dude, Ryler Smart, was 183 overall. He's out for the year, 6'4", 220. And then you've got Andrew DeMont, 350. I've not seen much on Andrew DeMont. 6'1", 190. He's a dude out of, let me find him again here. He is out of Wildwood, Missouri. So where is he factoring? Pretty good ranking there. Nick Abraham's a guy out of California, 6'5", 205. He's listed. I've seen some speculate he could start midweek. I really think Sharman, to me, profiles as the ideal midweek starter. But I could see Crabtree or Breedlove, too. Maybe it is an Abraham. But I'm going by guys who just where they're at as far as innings, because it's a different ball game with that. Stratton Scott's a dude out of Knox Farragut, comes in. Where does he factor in? Overall, this pitching staff, though, I think there's more talent. There's a lot more depth this year. It's just there's not a lot of proven depth outside of Nate Snead. Lloyd did a little bit last year. Banky, did some as well. But other than that, you really don't have SEC proven depth on your guys that's done it consistently. I mean, Phillips has obviously through SEC play, but he was inconsistent with it. A lot of your other, Franklin, he's pitched against good teams, but he's not done it in SEC. How does that translate over? Of course, Chase Dolander was the same way coming from Georgia Southern. Of course, Georgia Southern is a heck of a program. Also, Dolander didn't have much trouble, even though his last year he was a little iffy, but he's doing really well in the Rockies organization. Now, I think these freshmen, Krenzel, Strickland, Hayes, possibly Abraham. Again, I don't know enough about DeMont, and I don't know enough about Scott to know where they possibly contribute, and I didn't hear a lot about them in the fall. But there's a lot of depth. It's just a matter of who steps up into it. I think I go no particular order. Snead, Doyle, Coons, weekend rotation. Sharman, midweek guy. But they, that can change. They didn't have a consistent midweek starter last year. It wasn't like Xander Sechrist for a year or two where he was the consistent midweek guy or anything. And, before that, it was who Mike McLaughlin was. So they, for a while, had that consistent guy. They didn't last year. They started different dudes. But I could see Sharman possibly moving into that if he's able to, get the job done during the week. A lot of talent, man. A lot of talent. I'm telling you, it's probably the most talent that they've had since Tony Vitello's been there. It's just a matter of who steps up. There will be multiple guys step up. There's no doubt about it. They do it every year with it. They didn't bring Tanner Franklin in to not be a big part of it. I can tell you that now. I'm excited, man. I'm excited about this pitching staff to see what they've got. I'm going to release, of course, I released the starting pitchers yesterday. I'm releasing bullpen tonight. I'm going to record the catchers video. If you're a member of the channel, you'll get all of them tonight. If you're not, I'll release catchers tomorrow. Infield, outfield the rest of the week. And we're going to see on that live. I said I was going to do next Monday night live, but the Lady Vols in South Carolina play at 7 o'clock Monday night. So I really don't know that I want to interfere with that. So we may adjust on that. I'll keep you updated on that. Have a great rest of your evening. Frank, House of Orange. Last but not least, go Vols.